The international community slams Netanyahu over plans of an all-ground assault on Rafah, where 1.5 million people are crammed.
Russia puts Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas on its wanted list for what it describes as hostile actions against historical memory.
Poland, France and Germany vow to make Europe a security and defense power in response to Trump's NATO remarks.
Spanish, Polish and Moldovan farmers continue their mass protests against EU policies, unfair competition and insufficient government subsidies.
Israel is facing growing international pressure over its intentions to launch an all-out military assault on the city of Rafah in southern Gaza. With more than 1.5 million people now crammed into the city, promises from Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of evacuating civilians have been slammed by Josep Borrell, the EU's foreign policy chief.
Everybody goes to Tel Aviv, begging, please, don't do that. Protect civilians, don't kill so many. How many is too many? Which is the standard? But Netanyahu doesn't listen to anyone. They are going to evacuate. Where? To the moon? Where are they going to evacuate these people?
The UK's Foreign Secretary David Cameron, speaking in Scotland, was more diplomatic.
Really, we think is impossible to see how you can fight a war amongst these people. There's nowhere for them to go. They can't go south into Egypt. They can't go north and back to their homes because many have been destroyed.
Whilst Netanyahu has been focusing on the successful rescue of 2 Israeli hostages from Gaza, he's been congratulating the soldiers who mounted the dramatic operation. Israel's military has released footage of the rescue, showing the moment the soldiers moved in to extract the 2 men. At least 67 Palestinians were killed in support airstrikes launched nearby the rescue. With Israel believing Rafah and southern Gaza are Hamas strongholds, hostilities continue. The WHO say hospitals are overwhelmed and undersupplied. Over 20,000 people are sheltering in the European Gaza hospital, with no safe place to go.
The Kremlin has put Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas on its wanted list as tensions between Russia and the West soar. Kallas is a staunch supporter of Ukraine and has consistently called for more military support for Kyiv and tougher sanctions against Russia. The Interior Ministry did not initially specify the charges against her, but a spokesperson said they related to the desecration of historical memory. Estonian State Secretary Taimar Peterkop and Lithuanian Culture Minister Simonas Kairis have also been added to the list. Both Baltic countries have toppled Soviet monuments since Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
The governments of Poland, France and Germany have vowed to make Europe a security and defense power with a greater ability to back Ukraine. It's the message new Prime Minister Donald Tusk took to both Paris and Berlin as he tries to revitalize his nation's relations with key European partners. Fears grow that former President Donald Trump might return to the White House and allow Russia to expand its aggression.
Europa musi stać się kontynentem bezpiecznym, a to oznacza, że Unia Europejska, Francja, Polska muszą się stać państwami silnymi i gotowymi do obrony własnych granic, własnego terytorium i do obrony i wsparcia naszych sojuszników i przyjaciół spoza Unii Europejskiej.
Tusk then headed for Berlin. His diplomatic push comes after Trump shocked many in Europe over the weekend by appearing to invite Russia to invade any NATO member not spending enough on its own defense. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz blasted Donald Trump's comments without mentioning him.
Das Schutzversprechen der NATO gilt uneingeschränkt. Alle für einen, einer für alle. Und lassen Sie mich aus aktuellem Anlass klar sagen, Jegliche Relativierung der Beistandsgarantie der NATO ist unverantwortlich und gefährlich und ist einzig und allein im Sinne Russlands. Niemand darf mit Europas Sicherheit spielen oder dealen.
The one-time president of the European Council, Tusk, says he sees the European Union becoming a military power in its own right.
It's been 7 days and counting as Spanish farmers continue their nationwide protests with tractors and roadblocks against the EU's sustainability policies. They are also demanding support in the face of the effects of drought and rising production costs. For the past 3 years, the country has been in the grips of a severe drought, which has depleted water stores, impacting the majority of farmlands.
En mis últimos 2 años tenemos unas pérdidas, por ejemplo, con el cereal de un 40%.
Y este año pasado la sequía, una ruina. Tenía que haber dado el cereal a 4.000 kilos en secano y te ha dado a 1.000.
On Monday, Moldovan farmers blocked the main gateway road to Romania. The Farmers' Force Association is protesting against diesel fuel donations from Romania and insufficient government subsidies. They say farmers need help to alleviate the losses suffered in the last 2 years, and an injection of government cash is needed, or there will be no spring sowing of crops. Meanwhile, in Poland, farmers spilled Ukrainian grain on the road as part of their latest protest. The country has been hit hard by the introduction of so-called solidarity corridors to facilitate food exports from Ukraine after Russia invaded the country. Instead of transiting further, much of the Ukrainian produce is stuck on the national market, causing a decline in the demand and prices for local Polish production.
The head of the United Nations nuclear watchdog warned on Tuesday that Iran is not being, quote, entirely transparent regarding its atomic program. The warning comes after the announcement by a former head of Tehran's program that the country has, quote, in its hands all the parts needed to make a weapon.
If Iran wants to have a nuclear power program, as they have, they can, and rightly so, no problem with that. But they have to have a system of inspections which is commensurate with what they are doing, and they keep not giving the answers and the cooperation that they should be extending to the agency.
Since the failure of the 2015 nuclear deal with world powers, Iran has continued to enrich uranium. It has accumulated enough to build several weapons, but the US said that hasn't happened yet.
Scaffolding enshrouding the summit of Paris's Notre Dame Cathedral has been removed after nearly 5 years of reconstruction following a devastating fire, revealing the newly implanted spire, golden rooster and cross that adorn it. While much of the cathedral remains surrounded by scaffolding, the last few months has seen remarkable progress on the rebuilding, putting it well on track for a December 8th reopening.
Can the EU guarantee its own defence and security? That is just one of the harsh realities the bloc may face following former US President Donald Trump's comments on NATO. The Republican frontrunner warned the US would not defend NATO countries that don't meet the alliance's spending targets. Some experts claim the EU depends on the US for its security, even more so with the war in Ukraine.
On specific areas, I would put strategic enablers, for instance, or these strategic capabilities that are very much needed at EU level, such as strategic transport capabilities, satellite capabilities, maritime and air awareness, then at the same time joint logistics.
But military expenditure by EU member states is significant. It was €240 billion in 2022, almost the same as China and more than double Russia. One issue is cohesiveness. According to the European Defence Agency, EU states only spend 20% of their procurement budgets on collective defence equipment. How this money is spent is crucial, with a dilemma between short and long-term needs.
On short-term needs, of course, we need to replenish ammunition and capabilities and to urgently buy new capabilities. But at the same time, we need to also look on the long term, which is developing these European capabilities that we hear about in the press and in decisions.
Building an EU army through a defence union, as some have suggested, seems impossible at this stage. But there is scope for enhanced interoperability, procurement and delivery of weapons at European level. Some steps have already been taken, like a law to finance EU budget ammunition production called ASAP, or the creation of a rapid deployment capacity of up to 5,000 soldiers for peacekeeping missions across the world. However, other measures are urgently required.
When you have a war of aggression in Europe against Ukraine, when you have hybrid war by Russia against EU member states, this is the moment not to wage a war, but to deter the risk of an aggression against one of us. So if not now, I don't know when the European defense will really start to be seriously taken into consideration.
One suggestion, supported by French government, is an EU bond to finance military expenditure.